Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset. All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I'm Coach David Syvertsen here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee. And we are back for week 2 with Dr. Jonathan Hartman. John, thank you so much for coming back. And, how you doing?
Awesome. Happy Sunday.
Yeah. Nice. Cool.
Life is good.
You got the new fancy artwork behind us, courtesy of Coach Ashley, my wife. Thanks for getting us. We're just getting all the bells and whistles in this room. The storage closet that we are in the back of CrossFit Bison.
That was very cool. Thank you, Ashley.
But today's topic is going to be very, very applicable to every CrossFitter out there, and it's going to deal with inflammation. Some of you guys call this soreness. Some of you guys call this brain fog. It can all be under that umbrella of inflammation. And it's a word that I think gets a little overused by some, but misunderstood by many, where they don't understand what true inflammation is, why it's dangerous, what you can do to prevent it. So and inflammation is something that John has taught me more about than almost anything over the past 10 years that I've known him. And everything I think I know about why this is sore, why this is swollen, why I don't feel good when I do these movements, I talk to him and I get, the real answers. And it's usually complete opposite of what I've been thinking about. So Sam, Hartman, when you think about the word inflammation, what is your first thought that comes to mind?
Stress.
Yeah,
you can take stress and you can call that physical, you can call that mental, you can call that emotional, structural, but the big umbrella term is going to be stress.
Okay. And that does not necessarily need to be like, when I think about stress, I'm thinking about, having a 3-year-old doesn't sleep well, owning a business and trying to get my knee to feel better. That's like stressing me out, right? But you're thinking more about, could also be just working out, causing stress, like doing Karen what Sam just did.
Yeah, that was stressful.
And he'll have inflammation from that stressful workout.
But if we go if we can just dive right into the rabbit hole on
let's do it.
Sam's, what was your time, by the way?
It was awful. Don't even ask. Okay, I will say it only to make other people feel good. It was 11 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay.
Which was horrible.
But it was an acute phase stressor, right? Which in our evolutionary biology, that is what has been a norm.
Mm-hmm.
Is usually it's long periods of little to no stress, maybe times of food deprivation or starvation, but that level of like running from the saber-toothed tiger, or running from the bear, are really, really intense bouts of acute stressors. And then hopefully nothing after that. But then you're late to work. Your coffee was too hot. Patients were late. You were late. You got to help your kids' homework. Maybe we got into an argument with our spouse. You popped the tire. Dinner was cold. You got a shit night's sleep. It's that chronic.
Yeah. Flick.
That just keeps attacking and attacking and attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the chronic stress that I hope that we're going to spend the next, little bit talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really cool book. I'm going to always go back to books. And there was a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Okay.
And Dr. Sapolsky, Richard Sapolsky, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And they talk about how, look at a zebra, and what does a zebra do? They live on the savannah, they eat, they poop, they mate, they sleep, they eat, they poop. There's a herd of 50,000 of these zebras. And life is pretty good. And then maybe one day, they got a lion chasing their ass and they're running for their life, right? Like their life literally depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they kick the lion in the teeth, they get lost in the herd, there's another 50,000 zebras, and then the crisis is avoided. And that might not ever happen again. And that zebra had a life-threatening 11 minutes that their life was in jeopardy. And then they go back to peace and harmony.
Should have been 7 minutes, right?
Okay. But in the day-to-day, zebras don't get that level of chronic stressors that we subject ourselves to constantly. Maybe when the wildebeest is walking across the savannah and they have to cross over that big river, and now, shit, I got an alligator that's going to rip my leg. And maybe I kick the alligator in the eyeball or something, and then I'm running, and then I make it back up the embankment, and then peace for the next 10 years. No more stress. We don't get that anymore. And unfortunately, as humans, we subject ourselves to these chronic levels of micro stress every day. And it's those things that open up the door to chronic illness.
So give us your example, you said, of a wilting plant about when it comes to inflammation.
So this comes from a mentor and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Tom Culleton. He's a chiropractic neurologist and functional medicine doctor down in Texas. And he starts off with, when he interviews his patients to try to understand, what's the mechanism and their why, he looks at a plant. Simple. Good old house plant. And what do they need to thrive, right? They need food, water, and oxygen, like 3 basic tenets. We're really not much different. We need, food, water, oxygen. We need love. And we check that off the list with, good families and good relationships. And then we're going to come back to food, water, and oxygen. In the last episode, we were just talking about nasal breathing and the absence of nasal breathing, right? That's oxygen. And then that goes all the way back to children with, making sure that they breathe through their nose, because if they got tongue ties and they're breathing through their mouth and they're not getting adequate respiration and O2 exchange, that's one of our 4 basic tenets there, right? And if that stool that you're sitting on is sitting on, food, water, oxygen, and love, and you just knocked one of them out, you're going to fall. That's not optimal health that you can build a platform for CrossFit and athletic resiliency and capacity on. So it's so hard for me to not spiral and go off of all these different tangents, because they're so important. And when you're trying to address the resiliency of a person, a patient, a parent, a loved one, it has to go back to that. Right. And that is what resonates with me personally, emotionally, clinically. And when that plant is wilting, or when the plant is wilting and it's sick, what do? You'll give it water, you'll push it into the sunlight. Hell, you might even bring the plant outside to get some sunlight. Crazy concept that, and it starts to live again. It starts to thrive. But what about us? When we start to wilt, we're going to take a pill for this, we're going to take medication for that, and we're just going to try to, that's like, to me, that's like putting a stilt up on a plant on a branch, and just maybe we'll just keep it from, it's wilting, but if I just prop it up a little bit, all right, it still looks all right.
Yeah.
But if you take that even deeper and that plant is still wilting, well, shit, why don't you just spray the leaves green? Make it look healthy. Just spray it green. And to me, that's where, when we look at our children and ourselves and us as athletes, that if the plant is wilting, you got to give the body what it needs to grow. You're not looking just to spray the leaves green. You're talking with the airwave and stuff too. There's a time and a place, and it's appropriate. But if you're dependent on your belt and you're dependent on your lifters, there's maybe an argument against that. That might not be appropriate. So I look at that wilting plant and I think to myself, if the plant is wilting, what does it need? Those are the basic principles of addressing the physiology and the metabolic capacity of someone. And for us as athletes, what can we do to support that body? And it's going to go back to food, water, oxygen, and love.
So Dave is the wilting plant, but how do you help this wilting plant? He has a kid who isn't helping him sleep. What's he going to do? Like muffle the kid at night? Like,
I'm considering it.
He has a business which he's constantly focusing on and worried about, and that's a micro stress. He has like all these things that are literally beyond his control. There's no way, short of quitting his business, running away from his family, living like a monk on a mountain, that he could actually not have these stressors. So what is it that we're supposed to do to treat the wilting plant?
Yeah, totally sympathize with you. You know, like these have been dark days, and we both know that personally. These have been trying times. So if those are variables that we can't get rid of, you know, just like a tree down in Florida can't relocate to the fact that they might be subject to, you know, several hurricanes. What are they going to do? Maybe they're going to adapt and they're going to make their branches a little bit more pliable so that when wind comes, they can withstand storms. Maybe they're going to increase the depth of their root system so that they're more planted firmly in the ground. So when that hurricane comes, they've got a great support structure to withstand those storms. Maybe there's trees and mangroves in Atlanta or in Georgia somewhere where there's going to be a monsoon. There's going to be 12 feet of water coming in one day. So they might dig into their root system. They'll make adaptations because there are demands that cannot be changed. Myself personally, like, you know, sleep has been an issue, work and stress have been issues, but what are things that we can do to support the body?
So that's where I think a lot of us can get something out of this episode. All three of us, you guys that are listening, is that there are some things that are beyond your control. And I'm never going to run away from my family. I'm not going to quit the business. I'm not going to go live like a monk on a mountain, you know, so that my WOD times could be better, you know, although it sounds pretty cool. But there are things within our control. And I think that's where I lean towards, like, yes, you know what, Dave, there's certain things, Sam, certain things, John, certain things you're just not going to be able to fix. But let's talk about the things that you can fix. What can you do to reduce your inflammation? What can we do to reduce your stress levels? And I have three main topics. I want to touch on all three of them. And I'm trying to think of what would be better first to talk about. I want to bring up the exercise because part of the benefits of CrossFit is its mental release. How many times do we hear that, Sam?
Every day.
You know, I need to come in today because I'm stressed out. I need to come in and do these nasty, hard, high volume, high load, high skill workouts with my comrades at the gym and crush ourselves and be on the floor gasping for air. And I'm sore for 4 days and I hate it, but I love it. Right. And I'm not being condescending at all because I'm like that. Sometimes, like, if I have a long, stressful day, I want to go WOD. And like, it helps me for an hour. And then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, oh, gosh, like that's happened to me a couple of times over the past couple of weeks where I'm like, man, I'm just not recovering that well. And obviously, as Hartman has always told me over the years, you're burning the candle from both ends. At some point, it's just not going to work. So, John, take CrossFit out of it. This is not, you know, pro bison, pro CrossFit. Do people work out too much or work out too hard in an effort to relieve their stress? But at the end of the day, they're actually creating more stress, which creates the inflammation. Rabbit hole.
And here we go. So the short answer is going to be yes.
Yep.
Because even though that 11-minute workout might not seem like a lot because it's only 11 minutes.
I wish it should have been 7.
Yeah, 7 minutes. But that's in addition to every day you slowly, all right, I'm going to go down a couple rabbit holes because our big topics that I'm going to talk about are all going to go into food, water, oxygen, nutrition. Because in terms of what are the things we can change, I can't change my personal stressors, but I can change what I put into my mouth.
Yes.
I can change how I breathe. I can change some of my sleep parameters.
Yep.
But I can also scale back. Like there's days where my workouts are going to be like, all right, I'm not hitting above 135, 140 on a heart rate. And I'm just going to be lifting up a 100-pound medicine ball and just flipping it backwards for 25 minutes because I only slept for X amount of hours. I didn't like what my Oura ring told me. And I've committed as a father and a husband. So I can't do everything that I want.
Right.
Do you think those devices like Oura rings or Whoop can help people in terms of figuring out what to do that day, workout-wise?
I think overall that it can. I mean, for me personally, like I've had it since 2018, and it has been one of the most important accountability police officers that I've used.
Really?
Yeah, because like, not for nothing, but if I'm that guy who wants to break myself on Saturday morning because I look forward to that. I've killed myself all week serving patients. I want to get up at 7 and I just want to break my body down.
Yep.
And then when I look at this and I say, maybe I shouldn't because I'm going to regret that. And at least for me, seeing how much my stress has impacted my physiology, not just CrossFit training too, but just starting a company. And, I've worked, to be transparent, I've worked like 18-hour days since March of 2020.
Yeah. You work it more than anyone else.
So how much that has impacted my physiology, I can't take it away. But what I can change is the quality and the quantity of the food choices that I make. If I consume alcohol, if I consume coffee, if I consume stimulants that change my brain chemistry, I can control those things. And that's where I'm sure we're going to go into.
Mm-hmm.
What I think of, if I can maybe just go on let me go down like a little story to explain how I look at these chapters, and then we can talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take your left hand, you make a fist, and you take your right hand, you make a claw.
Yeah. And
then every day like this, you're slowly scratching at the skin. And every day you slowly pick, bother, annoy, destroy the tissue on that. If you kept doing this for the next hour, what's going to happen? It's going to bleed. By the end of the week, you'll probably hit tendon. By the end of the year, you've hit bone and lost your hand, clearly. But what if I told you you couldn't feel that and you didn't have pain receptors?
Mm-hmm.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
You're absolutely screwed. But what's happening into the intestines? So if we want to go into maybe nutrition and stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
You slowly pick, bother, annoy, destroy the tissue on the lining of your gut every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and you don't feel it. There's a chemical warfare that's happening, and we don't feel that because the great architect said, we're not going to put pain receptors down in the intestines, because if you're going to feel that every day, you're not going to live very long with what that's going to feel like. In my rabbit hole last night in prepping of what material I wanted to send you, there were some journal publications that I sent to you with regards to zonulin and intestinal permeability as serving to the biological door to cancer, autoimmunity, and disease. And there's this big buzzword that's made, tons of, social media hype on leaky gut. And if you imagine like a microscopic hole puncher that's going around and just boring a couple holes into the lining of the gut or the small intestines. So what this researcher did, Dr. Vigilanti, was they found that by studying cholera, that there are certain food proteins that behave like cholera, with creating a cell signaling pathway into the tight junctions of the epithelial lining of the gut that increase the release of a protein that opens up the junctions. And for babies, that's really important because when they're latched on and breastfeeding with mom, babies want to have a leaky gut because they get their immune system from mom, right? All those immunoglobulins are coming down, crossing through the gut barrier so that they can form their immune system. And it's supposed to stop. But then we're one of the only mammals that continues to drink the milk of another animal, which is a story maybe on another episode, but that barrier should be tight then. And then when we eat certain foods and the body says, man, I really want to take in those nutrients, I'm going to open up those doors so I can bring those protein, carbs, and fats into the body. But through studying cholera, they found that there's other proteins in little constituents that can cause the same cascade of events that cholera does. It's just not as severe today. So it doesn't kill you today the way cholera would, but it still promotes the same immune response on a slightly smaller scale. And that's when I go back to this, because if cholera is like this, like tenfold, but you're going to do this breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there's certain components of this that can cause that.
Well, what cholera does is open up the gut so that you lose water and die because you're just leaking water into your gut constantly.
So that's part of that. And then the other part is the immune system, so that the immune system can mount a response to whatever it's trying to attack and then flush the system out of the body. But unfortunately, it's so concerned with doing that ultimately leads right to dehydration and death. But they're finding that there's other things that are also causing this. And it's interesting. We got 5 fingers. We got 5 reasons. We got foods. We got bugs. we got toxins, we got stressors, we got hormones. So if we have foods, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones, and I can't take credit for this because this comes from one of my mentors, Dr. Tom Colleton down in Texas, like which of these things do we want to ignore? None, right? And if we find that these are mechanisms which they can promote intestinal permeability, that's why this journal publication was titled as Biological Door to Cancer and Autoimmunity and Disease. And how different foods, which we can talk about, different bugs like different parasites and viral infections, bacteria, foods, bugs, toxins from the water we drink, the chemicals that we put onto our body, stressors that we talked about in the last episode with running from the bear, and hormones. All of these things are things that can affect the integrity of our physiology and our gut lining, which is at the hallmark of autoimmune disease or dis-ease or lack of health optimization.
Can you give me a quick example of each one that I probably am doing wrong, like food?
Sure. Yeah.
Like start with food.
Yeah. So with foods, for example, there's like some real big commonalities within patients or just humans in general, right? Is, like 50% of the population is actually lactose intolerant, like in the world. And this is specifically to cow's milk. And, that's a protein where there's been literature, there's tons of evidence to support that children can, from autism spectrum disorders to type 1 diabetics, that they can have immune autoreactivity to tissue in the body from cow's milk.
But they eat and drink cow's milk all the time.
Yeah.
Like every day.
All the time. Every day.
Like cheese, ice cream,
right?
Like
all day,
yogurt, you name it.
So we're gonna go back to, is the plant wilting? Because every day you're slowly pick, bother, annoy, destroy that tissue.
So should kids not be drinking lactose or ingesting lactose?
So depending on the age of the kid, if like my daughter, we don't drink cow's milk. Like we drink goat, we drink sheep, we drink like gluten-free, non-cow's milk.
How about ice cream?
Oatly. Oat milk based ice cream. Oh, that's the best thing you've ever had.
Not bad. Yeah, it's
the
not bad.
best thing you've ever had.
Mm.
But so gluten, dairy, corn, soy. If I had to make like a public service announcement, you can probably change the world, end chronic disease, right? Gluten, dairy, corn, and soy. Boom, done.
Oh, I don't think I could give up corn or soy.
Yeah. So when I ran my lab work and I found that I do my absolute best to avoid gluten at all costs, because it's not fair for me to sit on my ivory tower and yell down at my patients, stop eating this shit. And then here I am having like pizza and donuts.
Right.
It's not going to work well. So I ran my lab markers and I don't have any intentional exposure to gluten. I have done my best for the last 15 years, like an apostle, to eliminate that. So I had other things, like we would have these organic non-GMO corn chips, and then my wife would make this amazing homemade hummus. Like life was pristine. Then I ran my blood work and I found out like I'm reactive to every freaking isotope of corn that exists. Like this sucks.
Maybe that's why paleo works, because you basically eliminate all of those things with a paleo diet.
Yeah.
And soy and gluten and milk and everything.
Like that's such a great foundation for health. So I ran my markers. I found out I'm not really reactive to gluten, but I am reactive to corn. I cut out corn. I lost like 10 pounds, 9 or 10 pounds in less than 2 weeks. And I didn't even change. I was carrying so much inflammation and water retention just because I was not eating gluten, but I was substituting with other stuff that I didn't realize, like, oh shit, there's this concept called molecular mimicry, and the amino acid profile of some of these foods, gluten, dairy, corn, and soy, mimic each other. So when you're staying away from one, substituting for another, well, sorry, pal, you're shit out of luck. You got to remove them both.
Are you going to do that?
I don't know. Here's a question that someone like me would ask, because my dad asked him this question. Hey, if you really want to get your neck better and prosper and fix this thing, we'll get treatment. We'll talk, get an MRI, which you got. He goes, but you're going to have to change what you eat. And my dad doesn't eat unhealthy, but he eats gluten. And what's the question my dad asked? He goes, well, what about like at the weekends or something like that?
You pick the wheels up a little bit,
like what if it's like once a day? And Hartman doesn't hesitate. He goes, no, out, done, 0, never again. And we don't like hearing that because we're so it's our routine, and it's what we're used to, and it's what we crave. And I think that if you want, and you have to be honest with yourself when you look in the mirror, like, do I really need to fix this issue? Do I really want to? What dedication level do I have? And if that dedication level is as high as you think it might be, then yeah, you have to completely nix it.
How about you personally about it?
So gluten,
All of it. Corn, soy.
I mean, I don't eat
Milk.
I don't eat soy. I haven't done milk in a long time.
So I'll also interject and say that when I ran pre-post markers on my lab work, I'll toot my horn and I'll let you know that my testosterone went up 250 points in 3 months just by removing those foods.
Right.
Just by removing those stressors.
That's awesome.
And because we go back to these funk med courses that I take, and I pound on my chest a little bit because Dr. Tom, in his like 25 years of teaching, I was able to boast and say, like, he's in his 50s and he has an extremely high testosterone level, like just absolute unit of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And my testosterone levels were higher than his, as they should be, not just based by age, but because I was so adamant about removing those triggers that were affecting, like,
Right.
like plant is wilting right now.
Right.
And you go back to what you were asking, what's your why? Like, how badly do you want this? And it is not fair for me, I live in a bit of an absolutist type environment because with the patients that I work with some patients that have some pretty nasty things, with like epileptic seizure disorders and Parkinson's and, a host of different types of cognitive decline and neurodegeneration. These are absolutes. There's plenty of literature to support like ataxia, for example. Like, there are subcategories of ataxia that are gluten-induced cerebellar ataxia. Just last week, I ran over this with a patient who's got a seizure disorder, and as sure as shit, sorry,
It's okay.
she has neurological autoimmunity to the Purkinje fibers in her cerebellum and to her cerebellum as a whole. And when you start realizing like the neuroanatomy about how these areas of the brain regulate autonomic function, and her heart rate variability is in the tank because if she's got a stressful job, she can't afford to derail from her diet because she has neurological autoimmunity where these things they're breaking tissue down. The other person who's got she's a type 1 diabetic. And when you show, here's how you're living, here's how this is affecting your immune system. When you do this, it causes X, it leads to Y, and you're here for Z. I can't fix this until you help me help you do that. And that has been my greatest privilege, to help people see that, because that's improved my life. That's improved my wife. If she's going to listen to this, we went through hell when we first started dating. We went through over 60 rounds of neurofeedback. She went through all these sleep physiologists because sleep was like one of her biggest. She couldn't sleep. So they said, well, you can take 700 milligrams of Ativan or some other antidepressant. So basically, we're going to give you a frontal lobotomy. We're going to spray those leaves green and we're going to just sedate you. Not my wife. That's not going to work in this house. So what did we do? Foods, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones. Here we were thinking that if we went through all this neurofeedback mechanisms that we'd be able to help with her sleep. The plant was wilting. We didn't go after that first. So we had to go back a little bit. We had to take a step back and find out, these things are things that are causing some stress and inflammation. We're going to have to work on those first. And that cliche of pulling an arrow back, and the further you pull it back, the further it's going to project forward, gave us the opportunity for the two of us to dial it in and say, there's some things that we need to make some lifestyle changes on. And by the grace of God, we did that. That changed our trajectory. And then we were blessed to have a beautiful, healthy little girl by doing what we do. We lowered and limited all of those different stressors on foods, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones, had a child. And now we're trying to bring that child up to know that these are things that affect the plant. And I don't mean to sound too extreme on that, but it comes from the foundation of being emphatically passionate about my pursuit of serving my patients. And that's my soapbox.
And you walk the walk.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I would say paleo has helped. I mean, and I think that maybe these are the reasons why being strict paleo makes me feel the way I do, because I am avoiding exactly those foods which you are saying are stressors.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the bugs then. What bugs?
Yeah. So like bacteria, bacterial and viruses, I mean, they're really hard critters to find, but if we go into like the importance of organic versus GMO foods, right? And how when you
regular foods have bugs and viruses in them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you think of like strawberries are one of the you ever hear like the Dirty Dozen?
No.
So if you the EW if you Google like the Dirty Dozen, there's like the list of like the 12 most pesticide concentrated foods in the world.
Okay.
Right. So when we grow like conventional strawberries, for example, they use Agent Orange, like back from like Vietnam, and they use that to basically kill everything in the dirt and makes it inert. And then they add NPK, right? Sodium, potassium, and calcium back into the, sodium, phosphorus, potassium back into the soil. Nothing grows. And that's how they grow their strawberries.
So GMO foods, organic vegetables and fruits.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to help?
With just the bugs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if we're just trying to make sure that we have like adequate food, water quality, we're trying to limit our exposure to, estrogen disrupting compounds found in, well, that'll be toxins.
Right. Plastics and stuff like that.
Yeah, plastics, that's going to go back to toxins. I think that if we can eat as close to organic.
So I shouldn't be drinking my water from this? This is okay though.
BPA free, right?
Yeah.
But,
okay.
But when we go to toxins though,
yeah.
And it's not to be critical of a water bottle, but sometimes like, those big 5-gallon bubblers.
Yeah.
They're sprayed with estrogen disrupting compounds on the inside of the bottles.
Oh, to make it more clean?
Yeah, they're like preservatives for water, but they're terrible for a hormone profile.
So those big ones that you put in the water cooler and you put upside down. Yeah.
They're sprayed with some nasty chemicals in there, but sometimes that water might sit in there in a factory for a year at 115 degrees
and leach all that stuff.
All that stuff's leaching in, and then we're just going to drink that.
I see.
And then there's a really good term that a woman who, her name is Patricia Lerner. She wrote a book called Outsmarting Autism, and she trademarked a term called the total toxic burden. And the total toxic burden is this accumulation of effects from total toxins, right? Food, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones, and how much these things affect our...
How do you get your water then?
We have a reverse osmosis filter in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I'm neurotic, but maybe I just care a lot. And
well, no, I actually like hearing it because like he'll say these things and it's like, I gotta fix some of my stuff.
Well, I drink all my water from water bottles like this, so I'm probably getting a crap load of estrogen-like compounds from them.
When we just think of like, what are ways that we can just make a slight change, for how much money we might spend in 6 months of buying water bottles, it's the same price of a reverse osmosis that you throw underneath the sink. And then
as he drinks from the water bottle.
but it's not to
Poland
be like
Spring is no longer a sponsor.
But it's never to be critical. It's like, listen, I've had my own bad choices. Like if I have a glass of bourbon, one drink of alcohol, I look at my ring and I say, shit, my heart rate variability is in the tank. My heart rate variability is in the tank, and I just lost a day of training now. So I got to practice what I preach, and I'm still human. If I fall from grace and I make a couple mistakes like that, and now I have to pick up the pieces and pick up where I left off.
I also want to interject in that Hartman, he teaches this way, he talks like this, because at some point down the road, you're going to have some serious issues. And we do feel like we're relentless. You can't touch us when we're 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s. But he sees, I think the credibility comes from what he sees on a day in, day out basis of what people are dealing with physically right now, and then eventually leads to mentally and emotionally. How many of these things could be prevented by where you get your water from, where you get your food from? In the moment, no one wants to hear, hey guys, no more pizza, donuts, no more bagel Fridays. Brock should be very upset when we stop eating the bagels.
I was about to say that's a lot of gluten. Yeah. I see that kid eat every day.
But there's alternatives though, right?
Yeah.
There's different types of gluten-free bagels made from cassava flour
especially
or rice
now,
flour.
Especially now. Here's a question my dad asked, and I know others have this question. Why is this an issue now, gluten, and it wasn't 50 years ago?
Yeah, so amazing question, because when you go to Italy today, even if you have celiac disease, you can still have pasta and bread and baguettes and no problems. But the species of grain grown in different parts of the world is completely different. And the grains that we grew 50 years ago in the United States, there are molecularly completely different than the amino acid sequence that we have today. And the species grown in the United States now, not just corn, but also gluten as well. And unfortunately, gluten. So when you consume wheat, barley and rye are two other. So there's like this triangle. If it's wheat, then it's barley and rye. And it's those three different grains in the United States that are grown that have been found to be not only molecularly quite identical, but extremely abrasive and immune stimulating to the intestinal lining. And that, when we talked about before, how that impacts these intestinal epithelial cells that increase what's called zonulin, that affects occludin, that opens up the tight junctions in the gut. Do you want to expose yourself to that? Like to what your dad said, I want to kick my heels up, but I want to have a hot dog and a cheeseburger or something on Saturday. All right. And then what happens if it takes you until Thursday to kind of regroup from that? And that's just because you don't have autoimmune disease.
Right.
And then maybe you're going out to dinner on a Friday. Okay, great. So you never have time to catch up and actually heal that. But now for us, if we're doing that 3-4 times a day, if we're not fasting, or if we have a big bolus of pasta or something, or whatever it is that's going to be antigenic and inflammatory, you're never going to have time to recover from that. And then you're wondering how you compound that over the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years. Now all of a sudden your health is just falling apart. And, we have this chronic epidemic of obesity, heart disease, cancer, infertility, autism. There's so many things now that are affecting, and I want to keep this just towards recovery for athletes and stuff too. And then I go right into these rabbit holes.
No, I think about the same thing. I think about my kids, and I think about the subtle changes that these could be affecting them on a daily, monthly, weekly, yearly basis. And if I can, like you said, on any given day, it's not something that's a huge issue, but over 10 or 15 years, maybe that has affected my kids in some subtle way, which I'm robbing them of something. And that's something that I think of, not so much for me, but for the ones who are especially a lot younger than me.
Yeah. And that's a really admirable point to think on, because I do my best to try to take that approach with Mila, my daughter, because pretty much every female in my family has at least 2 to 3 autoimmune diseases. It's almost a guarantee that I'm in the very small end of the genetic gene pool. So I have to be really mindful of those foods, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones, because I don't consider that I don't feel that I have a lot of reserve. There's people that might be just a little bit more genetically gifted, that are a little bit more resilient, and they can take a couple more punches.
Right.
I don't want my daughter to express what she has the potential for. And I'm not going to wait for her to have that.
To deplete her genetic reserve early when she should be keeping it for whatever other stressors she might be encountering in
the
life.
Things that we can't control, right? If it's going to be sleep and work stress and I can't change that, what can we change? It's going to come back to a lot of those triggers.
How about hormones?
Yeah. So we have it easy because we're men. We're very simple. We're simple. When it comes to women, right, they're a tricky beast.
Ooh,
really tricky beast.
All right, I'm going to listen very carefully here.
So, but what happens to a young girl from the second that they get involved in, they like to paint their nails. They'd like to color their hair. They have a cultural thing of shaving, and then they use shampoos and conditioners and things that they've called it's called lotion. It's a chemical shitstorm of constituents but if you ever use, so we have this app, it's called Think Dirty.
Yeah.
You download this app on your phone and you can scan all of your household products.
Oh, and see what chemicals are in these products.
You want to throw some companies under the bus?
Yeah.
Just take your shampoo, download Think Dirty and scan it. And you will see on a grading scale the carcinogenic activity and all of the estrogen disrupting compounds and the parabens and all of these things that are found in like what you would think would be like an earthy, crunchy soap.
Yeah.
And it's like a 9 out of 10, like 10 being bad and like 0 being the best.
Okay.
And
okay, you don't need shampoo, but what does your wife use shampoo with?
she has this green bottle. It's like $30. But we try to use as many like organic compounds. And she gets frustrated, right? Because the chemicals and synthetics.
Yeah.
My wife's got a great head of hair. She loves the chemicals and synthetics.
Yeah. They make it thick and full and feel nice.
But she doesn't want expressing autoimmune disease and chronic illness and putting that on her
How far
daughter.
down the rabbit hole can you go with this stuff?
You can get really caught up in this.
This is so difficult and impossible. But overwhelming thinking about how to avoid all this stuff.
Like when I go over lab work and stuff on this with patients, they're like, it's like paralyzing.
Yeah.
And we got to take a step back and say, like, I'm going to make one change today.
I was going to say, do you tell, you're not the kind of guy that's like, oh, you got to change your entire world. What's the simplest thing you can do to at least get this ball rolling?
Let's just be a little bit more present.
Like Kyle Rader has told me, oh my gosh, we're going to get yelled at again.
Why?
Because Kelly and Christine give me too much crap for I'm always talking about Kyle Rader on this podcast.
I love Kyle.
I know, but so whatever.
And they should love Kyle too.
But anyway,
why are they jealous of Kyle?
I was just with him Thursday. Our kids are at the playground and we were talking, and he has cut out gluten. And he goes, it's the one thing, even more than like drinking. If he cuts out drinking for X amount of time, he feels immediate difference.
Yeah.
And he goes, if you go off a bender at a business center or something like that, it takes 4 or 5 days before you actually feel like, all right, I'm back.
Yeah.
And that's an example. Instead of just, changing the shampoo, downloading
Think Dirty.
Changing how they drink water in their house. Let's do the gluten first. And once that becomes routine, because again, once you get used to it, it's no longer hard.
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to understand that. If you are going to go down the lane that John has with him, his family, it is hard initially, but it doesn't stay hard. It's just adapting to a new routine.
Yeah.
So I think taking on one thing at a time like this can make this a lot less overwhelming.
And this was no different. CrossFit's no different.
That's very true.
Right? Like this was real hard when I first came in 2015, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting my ass kicked 3-4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Why was I getting crushed?
Yeah.
I probably wasn't really as good about this as I needed to be because I could not recover.
Right.
So my training was affected from the choices that I was making, and it was hard. But not doing that, to me, if I don't make those changes, living like that is just a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And these are lifestyle changes that I'm just literally spewing out over the last 15, 20 years. Just be more conscious. If we can just be a little bit more present in what we're doing, just look at the fork and just make a choice. You're making a conscious choice at the end of the day, what you're putting into your body.
Yep.
When you're buying, like we get into the routine, when we go to Whole Foods and we go get our groceries, like we know, for example, we do our best. We shop on the perimeter of the building. Just shopping on the perimeter because pretty much everything outside on the perimeter has a shelf life.
Right.
Whereas everything inside with the rows has a shelf life for, a few years or something.
Right.
So just having those different things and resources that you're just slightly more aware of the decisions you're making already is a monumental shift.
This is all expensive too, though. That's the problem. You're paying a lot more for this stuff.
Very true, but doctors' offices are really expensive, and I would rather pay the farmer than the doctor. So because I get combative with patients when they say, this stuff is too expensive. Okay, well, can we make some choices here? Because this person, for example, might spend however much money on certain resources that might not be advantageous to their health. So maybe they go out to eat, 2-3 times a week, and they have no problem spending $150 to $200 at a nice meal with their spouse. But if they actually allocated that towards eating a little bit cleaner at home, I think that there's always some way that changes can be made. And if they can't afford organic, then non-organic is still going to be 10 times better than something boxed with a shelf life or something canned with a shelf life. Now there's resources with farmers markets where, they can't consider themselves organic because of how much money it costs in licensing rights. But when the farmer tells you we don't use pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and we responsibly grow all of our own produce, I don't care that it doesn't say organic now. So I can still live that way and on a budget.
Let's go into the last part of this when it comes to inflammation and what we can do. It's another book that you read, one that you sent me, just some cliff notes on, and it's sleep. And it's something that it's probably one of the very few things that each of us do every single day.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't do enough of it. And I can come up with every excuse under the sun. But at the end of the day, are you doing everything? Get away from are things set up ideally for you and go back towards, are you doing everything you can control at a higher level that can get you to get more out of sleep? What are your opening thoughts on someone that has chronic inflammation issues, health issues, can't recover, and they start asking you about sleep? Hey, what should I be doing? How many hours should I sleep? I mean, how many times do you get that, right? And I know there's not a template answer, but what rabbit hole do you go down initially when it comes to sleep?
This is like one of my hardest topics because I am afflicted with like chronic sleep deprivation from work and just being a young dad. And, you know, I know you were there through residency school,
it's the
kids,
worst.
And I'm a work in progress. You know, I know that this is a bear that I have tried and I'm trying. And, you know, so I'm halfway through Matthew Walker's book. And, you know, from what I've gotten from it so far, like sleep deprivation very well might be one of the most chronic killers that we have. And there's a reason why
I believe it.
Sleep deprivation is still used for a means of torture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like you can go crazy. And if you track if we go back, I haven't measured my testosterone since I started the office because I can't imagine how much it's depleted my reserves. And it's a variable that I'm trying. I'm trying to be better and, you know, trying to catch up on the weekends.
Any tricks?
I'm all ears.
Okay. Let's talk about a couple of things. Well,
Yeah.
I'll ask you from someone that's not on your level of just research and knowledge. I feel that I sleep much better when the room's a little bit colder and as dark as possible. Those are
Totally.
and the other part of it, which we are getting better. We just started doing this with our son, and we can actually see a difference because we're reaching for everything right now. Is no tablets before bed.
Yeah, those are good talking points. We about an hour and a half, like Mila gets no screen time. We go into the nursery, we read books, we play horsey, we play with our dolls. Hour and a half, non-negotiable. TV's off, no tablets. We have blackout curtains in the window.
Yes,
Like we are.
us too.
Yeah, we have these like Velcro curtain, like things that have adhered onto the window that's behind the blackout curtain. So
Nothing comes in.
yeah, nothing comes in. And what's his name wrote Huberman actually had an episode on how children exposed to light, like night lights, increases their risk of
ADHD, right?
Yeah, neurodevelopmental disorders and I think attention deficit disorders. And which I thought was really interesting. And you know, but I think in why we sleep, I think they found like 62, 63 degrees was like the optimal sleep temperature. So colder room, complete darkness. We use a weighted blanket. You ever use a weighted blanket?
No, I've tried it. I'm not a fan.
No?
No. I feel very suffocated.
I love that thing.
I need my feet to feel free for whatever reason. I don't know why.
No, yeah. I mean, just for us, like I have a 30-pound weighted blanket
Oh
that
my God.
I swear by that. Like we have our routine now between like cold, weighted blanket, blackout curtains. And then honestly, we go back to like foods, like nothing insulin spiking within 2 hours before bed.
Like, you mean sugar?
Alcohol, sugar, a carbohydrate. Like really anything that would create an insulin spike, because what that does to the cortisol awakening response is that when you start to spike insulin from some type of snack, or like we're guilty of having, you know, like treats before bed, if that causes an insulin surge, that disrupts the cortisol response that should not be happening until late in your sleep cycle or really early in the morning, which would be helping you wake up. So then when you become what's called like a reactive hypoglycemic, when you start to wake up in the middle of the night, or even worse, you're spinning your wheels and you're wide awake late at night and then you're dead tired in the morning, that insulin cortisol interaction is usually affected from some type of carbohydrate sugar intake.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a few things that have worked for us.
Have you ever tried melatonin?
I have. I think the research is kind of like 50-50, where if you're taking melatonin, I think, and I don't remember this from memory, but I don't know if that affects your body's natural metabolism and production of melatonin.
Huberman did something on that as well.
So is that the case though?
Yes, he says yes.
Yeah. So whereas like zinc, magnesium, boron, calcium, like there's some like trace minerals that you can take. There's something called Calm plus calcium, like from Nature's Calm, a little powder tincture you can do, and that has a couple micronutrients that could really help. I haven't messed around with melatonin. I try to, if I can get it from food, I'll do that first. And if I can do a top off with something like Nature's Calm, that's what's been helpful.
A lot of CrossFit athletes are pushing a lot of sleep aids these days.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on napping, right? For someone, like I have nights where I'll get 4 to 5 hours at night, and I justify it that I have an hour or two nap in the middle of the day. And those naps are very hit or miss. Sometimes you can't fall asleep in the middle of the day. Something comes up. Can naps make up for a shortcoming of sleep at night?
So I think according to Matt Walker's book, I think the short answer is yes, but that's not a good long-term alternative, right? Like sleep deprivation and hitting, like shift work. If you're working a graveyard shift and you're working 11 to 7, and then you're going to go to sleep from 7 to 10 and you're going to get a nap somewhere, that's not really good long-term. I think that's a great aid.
Better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing, but
so there is some point to it, just not as much value as people think.
I remember looking at it because I was doing that, and I still have major sleep issues, and the quality of sleep during the day is just not as good because you have that like deep sleep.
Yes.
You don't get REM sleep, all the different stages of sleep that you tend to go through when you're sleeping at night, and you're not going through that in your naps. It's just, it's very light quality sleep.
Right.
So it's not that restorative sleep that they keep talking about that you really
That's a huge, restorative sleep is really hard to get in such a short time frame, and not for nothing, but your immune system, like the glial system in the brain, you have the glymphatic system in the brain. That's the brain's natural immune recycling. It's trying to clean up all the cellular debris from all the metabolic activity that you did throughout the day. And if you deprive yourself of that, you're not going to get that in that 1 hour, 2 hour nap. And
it's funny, when I had a little stomach bug a few weeks ago. I don't even know when this was. This was in May. So it was a couple months ago. And Brock also got it right before. So he had it, then I had it. And the combination of him being sick and me being sick at the same time, we got to a point where we're just like, I'm going to bed at 7:30. Like literally that was it. And we would wake up at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning the next day, and like felt like $1 million. Like I was on a PED, like performance enhancing drug type. And here's a question that you'll get from a lot of people, because in the reset challenge, what's one of the reset challenges is that I think we say you had to sleep 7 hours, but we put a little asterisk in there.
Right.
Like a 24-hour period.
Right. Right. And it wasn't actually sleep. It was like kind of like go to bed and then get out of bed. Like,
so, and I'm looking back on it, and again, should we change this? Maybe we should. I mean, I think conversations like this that challenge you and make you think a little uncomfortable are good for all of us. That no, it needs to be done straight through at night. And, my schedule is X, Y, and Z. And I can use that argument too. You coach the 5 a.m. on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And the hard ass in me says, get to bed earlier. Yeah. And I've proven that I can do it. And I've even told Ash, I was like, hey, when Brock finally goes down, sometimes we should be eating dinner before he goes down, because a lot of times our routine is we eat dinner after 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then we go to bed.
Oof.
Right? And we've been like that for a long time, even before Brock. We used to eat dinner. Remember, our classes used to go to 9:15 at night?
Yeah.
So someone would get home at 9:45, then we'd eat dinner.
Wow.
And we did that for years when like the early days of Bison. And, you learn more, listen to Hartman, right? Make yourself vulnerable, be humble about it, and be like, you know what, maybe I do need to change something up. And I've made a strong effort, not as consistent as I want it to be, but I would say multiple nights per week where I'm in bed way before like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Last night, John texted me at 8:45.
You were asleep?
Out cold by then, right? And I wake up, I feel better right away. And I feel the worst nights are when I do have even a drink at night, and I know I shouldn't. And sometimes I need to come down from a stressful day or something. But even when I'm drinking it, I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this. And there's probably some addiction factors there.
More psychologic than physiologic.
Yep. And these, the nights of sleep, they're not good. And you feel it right away in the morning. And so my response to someone that says, no, Dave, I can't sleep 7 hours at night because of X, Y, and Z, I think a lot of us can do this. Get to bed earlier.
It's so funny because there's that Whoop group of probably like 10 of us that are all together. So you get to see how people sleep and their heart rate variability
I've been told by that Whoop group that you're always last place.
And I really want to bring in a couple of these people and be like, how the F are you sleeping 8 hours or 9 hours every night and your heart rate variability is like 130 and mine is like 37.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you can see the young ones, like they have awesome sleep during the week. And then in the weekend, it's like 2 hours. Their heart rate variability goes into me. It's like crappy during the week, and then it gets better during the weekend.
Yep.
But yes, I want to bring in some of these guys and be like, how the heck are you guys doing so well? Like,
I think we should do more of that. Like, I really do think we should have more conversations like this. And maybe you think that I've just always felt this routine growing up. Like, no, you eat dinner, then you watch TV for 2-3 hours. I watch the Yankee game. Like, I think about the Yankees all day and I get to watch them and I'm up till 10:40. Oh, it's an extra innings. Like, it's going to go to 11:30. Why are these commercial breaks so long? It's 12 o'clock now, Monday Night Football. Like, I almost watch all of them. And, with technology now, like TV to me is no longer an excuse. Like, you can stream anything. You can watch anything at any time. Like, I do that now with football games during the fall that I want to watch. I'll DVR it and I'll just watch it in the morning and you can watch a game in a half hour. And these are things that I think, we talk about being proactive to fix some of these issues, right? Like John has a certain way of getting water in his house. Look into goat's milk instead of cow's milk. And if, again, you can get overwhelmed by this stuff and sleep is really hard, but I do think that we need to go into these processes and be like, what is one thing I can do to make it a little bit better?
Personally, I'm going to stop the screen time before I go to bed. That's a bad one.
Yeah.
Like the phone.
Yeah.
Really
Does your
bad.
Whoop
Light.
tell you time in bed versus time asleep?
Yes.
Yeah.
My Ring
I was about to ask you guys about
keeps
that.
me honest because I can be in bed 8 hours, but I can also take a conference and stream it from my iPad.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I lost 2 hours or I'm death scrolling on social media.
My sleep efficiency is horrific.
Have you ever had a night where you're like, oh, I was sleeping for 8 hours and then it says 5?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do that every night. That's a big reason why my numbers are the crappiest at Bison.
Is that completely accurate, do you think?
I have
you weren't actually awake for 3 of those hours,
You know what?
right?
My Whoop is the worst. It always gives me the worst score. I have a watch, and it's a little bit better.
Okay.
But to be honest, because listen, there are people out there at the gym who are getting legit 8 hours of sleep,
Right.
like according to the Whoop. So if they can, I should be able to.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I have a couple of suspicions. I'm working on it too. I'm just working on it.
Yeah. No, I like hearing that. And I think you guys are also on a lesser scale making yourself very vulnerable. And, I know, John, you get a little uncomfortable. Like, you don't want to tell people to do something you're not doing.
Yeah,
like I get that, but I still think you have so much credibility and like all coaches should feel this way. Like, hey, if I don't have muscle ups, like I should still be able to tell people this is how you get a muscle up. Like, I think your intentions are more important in some cases than the actual what's going on in your life, right? You are as busy as anyone I've ever met in my entire life. If you sleep 6 hours instead of 8, like no one can look down on you, and I'm still going to listen to you tell me that I need to get 8.
Yeah, and if I can just interject and say I will try to fortify and supplement that sleep deprivation with any other variables. It's now, like recently what I've done since February is I cut out coffee.
Right.
And
oh, wow.
Yeah, so
But there are some benefits to coffee.
Actually, yes, there's plenty of benefits to coffee, but I find that with my sleep deprivation, when I have coffee, I'm too dependent and I get way too anxious.
Ah.
And like when my daughter was born and I started the office, I shit you not, I was drinking 3 pots of coffee a day.
Oh, that's a little too much.
I'd have my 3rd pot of coffee at 6 o'clock at night because I knew that I'd be done with my next patients for the next couple hours. And then I'd be downstairs till 3 o'clock in the morning because I was learning how to do all the billing, the accounting, and all that crap myself. And then we think about cortisol, stress hormones, how much that's impacting my physiology. And then here I am telling my patients, you got to remove all the triggers. You got to remove all the triggers. So then now my commitment, Jen and I, every February and March for the last few years, we go through this program where we go real strict. And then now I just try to ride that out as long as I can. So I cut my caffeine intake down by 90 something percent. And I talked with like Dan Greenberg about this because, you know, I'm pretty sure he doesn't drink coffee too. And, you know, but we found some of these mushroom powders and stuff.
Mushroom powders.
Yeah. Yeah. So Om, I think is what it's called, but it's like it's an alternative. I like the cultural, you know, in terms of like the psychological addiction to coffee is I like that hot cup of something where my wife and my daughter are asleep still. I can just give myself
sets you
15 minutes to set the tone of the day, but then I don't want the jitters. So I try to do this mushroom coffee as an alternative instead.
Does it taste good?
No.
Okay, then
no, it doesn't.
This is awful.
But it's just something like, but I feel, to me, like taste is like way on the bottom of the list of priorities for me personally, because I care about how I feel. I care about economic environment and environmental impact. And for me, that thing is like lower on the totem pole.
There's no way I'm going to get Susan to try mushroom coffee. I'm so sorry.
No, but now there's other things. You ever hear of SWP coffee?
No.
Swiss water processed coffee?
Dude, we're going so far down the rabbit hole. This is crazy.
So SWP coffee, Swiss water processed. So like you have like, you can have coffee, but there's certain coffees that are actually extremely contaminated with gluten. So if you have someone who has a neurological autoimmune or some type of chronic underlying autoimmune disorder, that cup of coffee that they might have at 7 o'clock and maybe at the 2 o'clock push after they had their massive like Italian sandwich, that's disrupting the integrity of the gut barrier. So if there's coffees that can be contaminated with gluten, that's kind of a hard pass. So then you try to find organic. Oh, great. You're making conscious efforts and, you know, you keep going down this rabbit hole. Caffeine is a stimulant I don't do too well on personally. Swiss water processed coffee, if I back up, you know how they decaffeinate coffee?
Yeah. Yep.
It's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
What do they use? Chlorine?
Yeah, some kind of chemical to.
It's a pretty harsh.
It's like a
process.
bleach type of process.
It's a pretty aggressive process, and we talk about like foods, bugs, toxins, stressors, and hormones. That stuff might not be the best for us. Swiss water process uses cold filtered water at ultra high pressure to naturally decaffeinate the coffee. So you can get like a 95, 97% naturally decaffeinated coffee bean that doesn't give you the jitters. And it's organic, they're organic and they're great alternatives. And, you know, when it comes to like affordability, well, if that's like $15 a pound, but you know, going to the coffee shop and that's like $5 every morning on my latte or something, I'm just changing my priorities. So that can still be affordable. And that tastes a lot better than mushroom coffee, you know? So.
All right. Well, that was a great kind of like all-encompassing inflammation podcast that I feel like we could all look at it from either nutrition, sleep, stress, all of the above. And like we said, don't get overwhelmed. Can you make a change? And can you evaluate that change and then eventually become something that just feels more natural? Can you go to the next level of changes, right? But I do want to encourage a lot of you guys that are chronically complaining about an injury or not feeling good when you come to the gym, or you're just not getting the results out of your fitness routine that you think you should be getting because you come all the time and you work really hard and you're sweating and you're on the ground being dramatic after workout. And that's admirable because you're putting a lot of effort into it. And a lot of people don't do that. You do deserve credit. But if you still feel like there's something else that you need out of your fitness routine for your results, and you can't just come back to the gym and do another workout, these are things that are probably what are preventing you from getting to what your goals are in one way or another. So any closing thoughts, Sam? And then we'll let John wrap it up with just what we just talked about for the past hour on inflammation and all-encompassing process. It's never one answer. But what can you do?
Yeah, my head's spinning because there's a lot to think about. I probably actually will listen to it maybe once or twice just to think of some things that I might want to incorporate in my life. Reset challenge, I think, is actually really helpful for some of these things because it's a good time to sort of get rid of some of these issues at, during that time. Like you said, you do that with Jen, like February, March. We do it at the gym in January. I think I'm going to approach the next reset challenge. And I might actually do some of these things before that, but then I'm also going to put a big effort in during reset to sort of really see what I can do to make some better changes with some of these things.
I look at it as like a challenge, and cutting out coffee, that's really challenging.
That's really hard.
It's real super hard, right? Especially when you're grinding 18-hour days and you're getting shit sleep. And then you start to realize like, wow, I might not need that stimulant as much as I thought I did. And then you can create some level of independence because you're realizing that, okay, if I can't sleep 8 hours, but I'm going to make those 6 hours count, how much those stimulants might affect the depthness of your sleep. Or like there's times where my sleep efficiency is like above, 90%, and I can still get it in, but I've only learned that from trying to remove some of those triggers and those stimulants. And, with some of my closing thought, your shirt resonated well with me about mandating exercise.
Rob Orlando.
I think that should be the prescription for everybody. And when you're talking about like some of the clients here at the gym that might be struggling with some aspects of recovery, I would have them critically challenge themselves, look yourself in the mirror and say, are you sleeping as hard as you train? Are you eating as clean and as hard as you train? Are you addressing those pillars to keep that body functioning well? It's great that you're training. That's fantastic that you're here and you showed up. But that might be the easiest thing that person does, because what they're putting into their body or exposing themselves to might take a little bit of effort. And I think that if they look at that challenge of training as they would approach their nutrition and sleep and stress management, I think that you can just build a really resilient person.
Yeah. I mean, I've been asked a lot over the past few weeks, how's training going? We have our qualifiers coming up in 7 weeks. That's been my goal since December when I got hurt, was to be ready for those.
Legends.
And I've been saying like my training is going well. I feel I'm doing things, I'm hitting weights and hitting movements, but my recovery is garbage. Like after a workout or two, I just don't feel like I can bounce back. And to me, that's what fitness is in sport. You have to 4 days in a row. You got to be 100%. And I think I need to take a longer, harder look at some of these factors that are kind of good, but not good enough, rather than just saying, oh, I'll just, it's just going to take another 6 weeks to magically recover better. There need to be changes that are made, so thank you, John. That was awesome. You crushed it on these 2 episodes. I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point down the road, because I know there's a lot of topics that I think you could just give a really unique perspective on. So we look forward to having you back someday, man.
I can't thank you enough. It's a privilege. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Right.
Our new business neighbor. See you guys.
Peace.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.